Lizzy here from Lizzy Curtis Designs. Today I'm going to show you how to make Jamelia, which is the beautiful, beautiful sunshine quilt that's behind me. I'm going to move in a sec so you can see it all. That's what the front of the pattern looks like. And you probably won't be able to see very much of that, but it shows the vibrancy of it, and it shows the difference between light and dark, and we'll see it in its true form in a sec. So Jamelia is made using one of my Wonky Square templates. Now, you may not know what my Wonky Square templates are, but there are a set of 4, they're acrylic, and I have made so many things using them. And I couldn't resist making this style of quilt that's behind me using them. And it depicts the sunshine in June. Because we launched this in June, I'll just come out of the way so you can see it better. So because we're launching this in June, it means that this is depicting the June sky. So from a really sort of cool sort of day, maybe, especially in the UK, but then obviously going through the day, perhaps it starts off a bit misty. That's a good example. And then coming through the day, the skies start to get bluer and bluer and bluer and bluer and bluer. And of course this represents the sunshine, and this represents the heat of the sun and the blue of the sky. So this is Jamelia, and this is using my Wonky Square template, which you have a paper copy inside the pattern, one that we've already done before. We're using the 8-inch. In my demonstrations I'm using the very small one, which again you may well have had in another pattern. But in the actual pattern itself, you're at the 8-inch one, and I might throw the little 4-inch one as well, actually, because we've already done it before. So this is Jamelia, and I think she's absolutely gorgeous. I love her. Next to that, you'll see a lovely sort of florally matte. Now that is J, and that is the second pattern for June 2023. Again, depicting the sunshine with the yellow in the centre, radiating out into the blue sky. But this time it's a matte. It's got thermalam in there, so you can put hot things on there if you want to, but perfect for the centre of a picnic perhaps. Maybe you're going to put a lovely plate of sandwiches on there, or you could put a lovely cake on there. But needless to say, it's a very, very useful mate because of the thermalam, and not much quilting in J. A little bit of quilting to do in Jamelia, but that's up to you how much quilting you do. On my little sample, it's kind of like a shrunk down version. I'll be doing just stipple quilting, and I'll show you a little bit of that as we go along. So this is what we're making. I think she is absolutely gorgeous, and I hope that you'll enjoy the tutorial, because even if you're not going to buy the pattern or make the pattern, it's still pleasant to watch somebody sew, isn't it? So if we look on the overhead straight away, you can see this is what the pattern looks like, and obviously you'll get the requirements in there. I'm still in the process of writing the pattern as we speak. You will also get, and you'll forgive me now for scribbling on mine, but you'll also get a mock-up of the quilt itself. Now, I have used light to dark with the yellow in the centre as representing the sun. Now, of course, you don't have to do that. One of the things I thought about was that you could actually do, instead of the white, it could be black, and you could have really strong, vibrant colours in there. You know, the primary colours, blues, greens, reds, yellows, that type of thing, and maybe the odd square of black. So when we look at the square, I'm going to show you an example, obviously, as I make, but each of these squares is this one here. So our Wonky Square template that I'm giving you is this design here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces making up a square or block. We could call it that, because if you're a quilter, that's how you know it by. So each of these are blocks. So we've got 5 blocks by 5 blocks to make the square. Obviously you can make it bigger. If you make it bigger with a variegated colour, then you want to think about stretching those colours out even more. But obviously that's where your own imagination really kicks in. Now what I've done is, and I will do this on the pattern, is actually put a letter on what fabric this refers to, because when you come to put this together, for instance, you know, if we look at this one here, this block here, we're using 2 white pieces and two different colours of blue, and it gets more complicated in various squares, various blocks. So you need a guide, you need to follow the process. Okay, now the other thing is I have given you, now I'll just bring those in because we've got the bottom row to do. We're going to create this row along here today. I've already done this. And in the pattern, if I just bring all these bits in, let me turn that over and then you'll be able to see these better. In the pattern, I give you the colours of what I have used. Okay, now you may not want to use these colours, obviously, and what I've done is, and this is really useful, is that I have labelled my fabrics. So once I have decided what fabrics I'm going to use to either get the variegated look or to do it, you know, the blacks and primaries or whatever colours you like, it's really important that you label them, because to make the Wonky Square block up itself really always blows my mind, because it never seems to go how you think it's going to go, but obviously it fits and we'll see it as we go along. But I lay every single block out before I move on, and I use my pattern here to help me do that. And even though I've made so many things with these Wonky Squares, it still blows my mind. So when you get the pattern itself, you will get obviously the design. So let me just move all that now. So you'll get the design like this. You'll get that to look at as well, because that will give you an indication whether you like the light to dark. I love it. And obviously when you look at it on the actual pattern itself, it's really quite clear. Once it's quilted, it kind of merges in, and the lines are quite blurred in some respects, but that's because you quilted it. But I really strongly suggest that you cut these out. And I know, like I say, I have done these in my colours, but obviously as long as you follow, like these are all A, so we've got A here, these are all B, so I've got B here, C, D, that's D, E, F, G and H, and if you follow the chart you really won't go wrong, but if you don't label it you might get a little bit confused, and I bet anything you like I'll get a message from somebody to say you're right. Having made a couple of these now, I do understand. So yeah, so it's worth just cutting those out and clipping them or pinning them to all of your Wonky Squares once you've cut them out. Now the Wonky Square is this little chap here. Let me get some dark fabric, that may help. There we go. There's this little chap here. The acrylic templates that a lot of you, hundreds of you own now, you get a set of 4. This is the smallest size. You've got how it looks in the centre there, so you can always follow that. We're going to be using that today, but you can make the quilt behind me, the Jamelia, that is making it with the 8-inch. And that's like the 3rd size up, so you could make it even bigger than that, or yeah, there's so many different choices. In the actual pattern you're getting the 8-inch Wonky Square and you're getting the 4-inch Wonky Square. I've just made that executive decision. So you can make the medium sized one behind me or the smaller one that we're going to do today. So let's crack on. Full instructions on how to cut, and it's quite important again to follow the instructions for the Wonky Square template. All your fabrics need to be right side up and your template right side up. Okay, so if you're cutting strips, which I do recommend you do, then you want to make sure that your strips are turned so they're all facing you. So you don't want right sides together, you don't want wrong sides together, it will absolutely not work. So everything needs to be right side up, including your template. I think I've said that enough times now. So we've got our pieces that we need and we've got our pattern to follow, and I'm going to keep that on my desk and you can follow along with me how I put this together. So I've got my white squares as well, my Wonky Squares. So I've already made some of it up. Okay, so let's have a quick look at it. I'll put it just on top there like that. So all I've got to do now is to make this bottom row along here, which is great because it means that we're going to make it quite quickly now. You can see I've used exactly the same fabrics because I bought plenty so I could do that, and it's just going to be like a miniature version of what I've done. So everything I do today is exactly the same whatever size you make. So I'm going to be making this bottom row, so I'm going to put this to one side for the moment because I don't really need it to follow the design, but what I do need is this. So we're going to look at this first square here, and we need 3 white pieces. So there's one, you can see that perfectly fine. There's the other one, so 1 and 2. Then we need a third one which goes here, and like I say, they kind of blow your mind a little bit, and we want an A. So assuming you've got it labelled, which obviously I have, I know I need that A, so I'm just going to take the one off the back and put it here. And like I said, you see what I mean? It still blows my mind. So that is our first square. Yeah, so I'm going to stitch that together. I'm going to stitch that one to that one, that one to that one, and then the 2 pairs together. Now when you're making these, obviously you can chain piece. In other words, you can stitch them all together at the same time. If you've laid them all out and you know what you're doing, then of course you can stitch them together at the same time. However, let's do one at a time. So the main thing is when you pick up your wonkies, let me hold it like that, this angle here is a right angle, okay, and you need to put that together. So if we put it down on the desk again, let's put it down like that, that's how it should go. They fold together, they go on top of each other, let's just do that, and they fit absolutely perfectly on top of each other. Can you see? Just here. They sit beautifully together. So we're going to stitch down here. 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you do want to do a different seam allowance, then be consistent with all of your pieces. So those are our next pair. And again, you know, like I say, it can blow your mind a little bit. So we're going to do right sides together. If any of you have made a Wonky Square yet, and there's loads of you who have, you know what I'm talking about when I say it blows your mind. So this is the centre here, so we're going to stitch down here 1/4 inch. Okay. And like I said, you can chain piece these and make this really super quickly. So let's just quickly look on the overhead again. So let me just finger press that crease there, and you want to try and do opposites, so the seams nest beautifully. So there's our 4 Wonky Squares, 2 and 2, and now we stitch those 2 together, and that makes our little block. Now of course, if you want to, you can trim these blocks to a 4 inch. They should be a 4 inch, but you might want to trim the edges and make them super duper neat. I must be honest with you, I haven't done that with the big quilt or this little one. Rightly or wrongly, I decided to go with whatever happened. Maybe that's dangerous, I don't know. So there we are, so there's our first square done. Can you see what that looks like? There. So although it feels a little bit tricky when you do them, they actually come together quite quickly. So let's have a look at our diagram again, and let's have a look at our square. So you can see that that now matches that. So now we need to do this one. So I know I need 2 whites here, so let's put the whites on the table. And do you see what I mean about following this all the time? So you can see the shape, you can see how that's supposed to look. Yeah, we need an A, which is this one here that I've already got my piece ready, and I would suggest you do cut everything. And then I'm just going to pop that there, and I need a B. So this is my B, and you'll find this absolutely invaluable. I really strongly believe in that. So B sits like that. Okay, so now we've moved on to this one. So again, stitch those together, and then pop the 2 pairs together. So let's quickly do that. And don't forget that center point is where all of your pieces come together. They match up beautifully on that center point. So by just keeping your first pair in there, bringing your second pair up, getting that center absolutely perfect, you can chain piece. And obviously you can do all the rest like this. So just break your threads. So there's our top pair, there's our bottom pair, and again nest those seams, so just finger press them out, and then we're just going to pop those 2 together. And this is as easy as stitching squares. So when I called them Wonky Squares, yeah, they are wonky, but they stitch together just as easily as just stitching squares. So although maybe it looks complicated, it really isn't. Once you've got your labels done, that's quite important. So there we are. So there's our second wonky square. So let's just lay that down. And when you come to put them together, you'll find that your fabrics always match. So if, for instance, you do that, that's not right, because that fabric doesn't match that fabric, okay? And if you look at the pattern, we need white all the way along the bottom. So I'm just going to turn that, and now my fabrics match. So I know that's right. So the third one, we're going to look at this square here now. So you're looking at this block, okay? So again, I know we need 2 white. So we've got 1 here. It's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. I don't stitch anything at all until I've got them laid down like this. So that's the first half, like that. And now I need a B. And it's lovely when you come to the end of all your heaps. So there's my B, and now I need a C. So it's bringing in a different colour than what we've had before. So just bear with me. That's it. And again, look at the shape, see where the point comes down, because that's what I do. I see how that point comes down. In actual fact, when you look at the shape, it rotates around, so it actually works like that. That's why all of your shapes need to be right side up when you cut, you know, in your fabrics. So this is our third pair. So again, we're going to bring the pairs together. And just make sure I always hold that centre and make sure that all my edges are sitting nicely on top of each other. So let's bring the machine in, and again we can chain piece. So although, you know, there's a lot of piecing, really, it's actually super easy. And you could easily put this top together in an afternoon, because it's literally just straight stitching and piecing. That's all it is. Typical patchwork, I'd say. So there's the top half, and there's the bottom half. Let's make sure they're nesting. And you want to perhaps try and make sure that all your seams are going the same way on the back of the little quilt, or whatever you're making, this little mat. So nesting the seams. And you'll notice I've got tape here. I don't use a 1/4 inch foot. I find some of them quite inaccurate, so I tend to measure my own and keep to that. So there's our third wonky square. So we're building up a collection of wonky squares now. So we've just done those 3, and now we'll just pop that there. So let's look at square number 4. So again, I know I need 2 white there. So it's 1 and 2. There we go. And I need a C and an E. So a C is what we've just done. So do you remember? We need it to match. We need it to match, and it does. So that's good. And we need an E. There we go. This is our E, and that sits like that. That's that one. So stitch those, stitch those, stitch the pairs together, and that's all you're ever going to do. So let's just bring the machine in, bring those center points together. That's your key to get those to sit together. Second pair, which is the white. So there's our top half. Okay. There's our bottom half. Again, push those seams out, just finger press them, it's fine, just a finger press. Once we've done all 5, then I'll give them an iron. So nest those seams, so you're pushing one seam one way, one seam the other, and all the way along. So there's our 4th square. So let's do the last one. So when you get to this point, you'll be so happy. Now you might see drawings and markings on this fabric. It's heat erasable, and I will iron it off in a minute. I was working on something else and used this fabric. It's beautiful. So this time we've got 3 white, like that, and that is, I think I've cut that really badly, but we'll be okay. And there's my last one there. So if you look at this one here, that's what we're just doing. Let me bring it in so you can see. So that's what we're doing. We needed an E and 3 white. I haven't bothered putting a letter on that. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So that is my last square. So I'm going to pop that together, and I'll get my iron on ready. And try and keep your squares in a row on your desk if you can. This particular size that I'm doing isn't too, it doesn't get too much in the way. Obviously, if you're making the bigger size, you might want a bit of floor space, or if you've got a lovely big table. But lay them out so you're not getting in a muddle. But you have got the diagram, and that's so been, for me, that's been so super important. So super important. So my 2 halves now get put together. Just make sure you nest those seams again. Top to bottom. Nest. So you can see it's a lot of machining, like any quilt you make, but actually you're making something totally unique. Totally unique. So there's our last square. Again, apologies for all the drawings on it. And you can see that it matches. Do you see those 2 blues there? They match. So that's all you've got to remember, really. So let's just move the machine out of the way. Get the pressing mat up. And I'm going to keep them in order again. I mean, obviously you've got the pattern, so you know where all of these go. And if you want to set your seams in between stitching each piece, then of course set your seams and press. This is all down. For me, when I'm doing this for you, it tends to be about speed. So there's one. So like I say, you might want to trim these down, or just trim them so they're neat. Now what I want to do is actually push that seam away from the white. So when you hear people say press to the dark side, then that's what I'm doing. It's not desperately important because the rest of my seams are actually coming down. There was a reason for that. They just look neater. So just work your way through and just press that seam up. If you want to open your seams up, of course you can. And opening your seams really helps when it comes to quilting, because you haven't got lots of bulk in one particular place. So, there we go. So you can see how this looks. I want you to have a look at the fabrics. So these two go together, these two, and this last one. Super, really lovely. Lovely. I love how the wonkies come together. So I'm just going to turn that iron off. There. So now we've got all 5 squares. So this is one whole row. Obviously if you're making the bigger size, you wouldn't be able to see this. It would be off my desk, or at least off view. So it's nice to do this size so you can see it. So literally we're just going to join these squares together. Now what you'll notice is that when you're joining on the vertical like this, you haven't got any seams to match at all. It's really lovely. There's no stress here at all. None of these seams match. The only seams that match are the ones when you're stitching across and you've got these points here to match. Okay, I'm not so worried most of the time about that, about matching and getting your points beautiful, but it might be something that's important to you. So just take your time. And certainly by trimming them will help that, because each one will be exactly the same size. So we'll just work our way along. So there's the first 2. So I'm working from the right to the left now. So there's the first 2. Okay, so I'm going to join this one on now. So as long as your fabrics match, then you know that you're stitching the right pairs together. And it's lovely that there's no matching of the seams on these verticals. Really lovely. So there's the 3rd one on. So let's get this one on. So try and keep consistently to a 1/4 inch seam allowance if you can. And then the last one, again match the fabrics. You may well put one on upside down, but do check. Don't join the rows together until you're absolutely sure that they're all sitting the right way. Have a look at your diagram again. So there's our bottom line completed. It's amazing, isn't it? I love it so much. So I'm going to give that a quick press, and then we'll attach it to the bottom of our piece that I've already made. And what you want to do is just to make sure the seams go in the opposite direction. So this is the back side of mine. So do you see the seams are all going this way? Oh, is that the right way? No. I'm thinking there should be no white. So my seams are all going that way. So I'm going to press my seams that way. Okay, I'm going to turn it upside down. And if you've got any best press, it's always great to, oh, this is twisted here. That's a shame. That's a shame. But what I tend to do, it's a bit of a cheat, I tend to snip into it just a little bit. And if that seam is going over, then you don't see it. So you might want to do that. But do make sure your seams are lying flat. Not like mine, they were twisted. So just push those seams over. And like I say, best press is fantastic. It really helps your seams lie flat and neat. So let's just move that out of the way. So that's how it's going to go. And as you can see, where is it? Here it is. As you can see, they're going in opposite directions. That one and that one. That's the squares. Can you see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they're going in the opposite directions here. So that's the only place where you want to try and nest the seams and keep them keep them sitting correctly. Whatever happens on the sides, we can trim. We can make that better. Right, so let's just get rid of the mat. Now, you might want to clip your pieces together. You might want to pin. You could even hand baste. Does anybody do that anymore? I think in dressmaking you have to, really. But I'm just going to go for it because that's the sort of gal I am. By this stage, I'm just so grateful that I'm nearly finished. And we love doing our projects, don't we? But you know what? There's nothing nicer than getting to the end. Right, so I'm just trying to make sure that my seams are nesting. You'll find that the wonky squares, the ones that you've cut and put together, etc., they are, some of the edges are bias, so it actually makes it a little bit easier sometimes to fit. So you can just give it a little tug and it will sit together fine. So unlike regular squares, which obviously have no bias, and there's no give, these have give. So they are very forgiving. It's great. I do love something easy to use. I really do. Anyway, let's get this done. Okay. So let's have a quick look. Move all these bits and pieces out of the way. So obviously it needs a bit of a press. Some of my points really are not, but by the time it's quilted you absolutely won't notice it. So this is the row we've just done, so it does need a nice press, and all of these seams are going down, so I want to make sure that they follow. Give it a good press. We'll trim it a little bit because it's a little bit off in places. I'm okay about that. But doesn't it look fabulous? Oh, I love it so much. So if we look at the back, can see what that looks like. Can see how these seams are all coming down. So we need to continue with that. So we'll give that a little press. Not much. You don't want to see me pressing everything. Let's just bring my iron over. And obviously you can set your seams. I can hear people already asking me, do I set my seam? Yes, if you want to. Right, so it's a great little piece of patchwork. You can see how many pieces there are. Fantastic. I'm not sure I on this one, but we'll give it a little bit of a press. And I must admit, if you use, a big household iron with steam, that has to be your absolute best friend when it comes to when you've finished your quilt top like this. So I have pressed my little quilt top. So now all we need to do is to put the borders on. So if you have a look at the quilt behind me, let's get out of the way again. You'll see that I've put two big borders on the sides. I've cut that down slightly for my little one, but needless to say, it's a great way of making your piece a little bit bigger. So you can add on whatever size border you like, but in the pattern I tell you what I've done here, and then obviously we've got the backing and the binding to put on. So the first thing we're going to do is to put this colour here on, this sort of mid blue on, and we're going to put on the top and bottom ones. So the ones that are on the top, can't see the top really, but the bottom one down here, we're going to do those. So if we look at the pattern, if I bring that in, there we go, we're going to do this one here and this one here. Okay, so on the pattern here, the side ones are actually the short ones, but I'm going to do the short ones on the top, so along here and then along here, and then we'll put the two long side ones on. So I've got my fabrics ready. There we go. So we're going to put one along here. Obviously these will be, in fact I think I've got two different lengths. Let me just check that because I've got the side pieces on there. I'm pretty sure. So this is the top and bottom pieces, okay, and the bottom piece here. There. So I'm going to join that on, okay, right sides together, and we're just going to stitch all the way along there. Let's just bring in the machine. So you can pre-cut these if you want. I would wait until you've finished the actual design and then measure, because everybody's sewing is that little bit different, and it might be a little bit wider, it might be a little bit smaller. So again, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And like I said, I think I said to you I'd already trimmed my piece, so I'd just put my long ruler against each side and actually got it so it was lovely and neat on all 4 sides. So just be careful you don't stretch your wonky squares, because like I said to you before, they are biased. A lot of bias edges going on. So there's the bottom strip. Let me just show you. So it's the bottom piece we've done there. Okay, so now I'm going to do the top. Oh, I hope I haven't muddled these up again. Oh no, we're okay. I knew I'd cut 2 smaller ones and 2 bigger ones. So what you can do is, once you've put top and bottom on, you can give it a press. So there's my top one. I'm just going to give that a press. So there's our top and bottom pieces pressed beautifully. So now we're going to put the side pieces on. So again, I would wait until you've finished each stage so you can measure and make sure that your piece that you've cut is the correct length. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, it should be fine. So, but I would wait. It's all very well. Sometimes in patterns they say cut it 25.5 inches, and when you come to stitch it on, it's either too long or it's too short. There's nothing worse than too short. And it's only because of seam allowances. If you think how many seam allowances there are in just this little piece, I haven't counted them, but there's a lot. And you could easily come off of your 1/4 inch seam allowance and make it a lot bigger or a lot smaller. So I would wait. I'll give you the measurements of the big quilt, because that's the pattern of Jamelia. Indian summer. Actually, I'm just wishing for any sort of summer at the moment. Okay, that's absolute perfection. Let's just get that straight. I don't backstitch, you might want to. So there's one side attached. Okay, you see there? Just about. I'll give it a press in a sec. Oh, it's just so beautiful. I think blues are always so pretty, so kind of fresh looking. And very, very, I think, the colours of June. The blue sky, hopefully. Yeah, lovely. It's a bit like daffodils in the winter. It kind of lifts your spirits. Well, it does me. What lifts your spirits? pretty hanging basket, pretty pot of flowers, or maybe somebody sent you some flowers, maybe there's been a birthday or an anniversary. Does that lift your spirits? Does mine. There we are. That's about 1/8 of an inch too long. Let's give it a trim. Yeah, good. So there's my sides on. So I will now go and give that a press, and we'll put the second row on. There is my first border applied, so we're now going to do the second border. So I've got my pieces of fabric ready. So we're going to do top and bottom again, just like we did before. Now I haven't cut these to size. I have literally just cut straight across, selvage to selvage. I knew in this instance that would be plenty for this little quilt. And then I will just trim, excuse me, and then we'll do the sides, but we've got cornerstones to add. So I'll show you how to do that in a sec. So we're going top and bottom. Let me just make sure I have got my top and bottom. Here we go. So I'm going to just hang that over the edge a little bit just to make sure, and then I can trim. Just keep an eye on the seams, make sure they're still pressed where you want them to be pressed. So you'll have a certain direction that they'll want to go. So this same process is exactly as the big quilt, and if you have got my Wonky Squares, the actual acrylic templates, then you can make it even bigger, or you can do the medium size between this one and the one I've created. So there is the bottom of my piece there. So I'm just going to I'm just going to cut that. I'm not going to cut it just yet though. I'm going to do the bottom first, and then we'll put it on the mat and we'll cut it on the mat with a rotary cutter. Because I'm cutting these by hand, it never gives you that huge accuracy, so that's why I just hang it over the edge just a wee bit, and then I trim. Now obviously you can measure yours and get the exact measurement and trim and stitch, but sometimes it's okay to do what I'm doing. And nobody's going to say to you when you gift it to them, did you measure your borders? Did you make them the right length? Cool. I'd be saying, well, yes, of course I did. Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Beautiful. So we're just coming to the end. Let's make sure that's nice and square. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to trim these just yet. Let me just show you. I'm going to press them over and then I'm going to cut. And I'll show you that on the overhead. So I've put my top and bottom on of my second border. Yeah, and now I'm going to just trim that, make sure it's all beautiful. So I've pressed and now I'm trimming. So you can see if you put your ruler on, you can get that beautiful straight cut. And I'm just going to move my quilt around and trim all my pieces. Did you see that little bit of seam has come undone? So I need to watch that. Need to watch that. Okay. And the last one. It's like everything, it's all delicate until you get all the binding on and get it stable. So just watch it. And just trim that away. How gorgeous is that? Okay, so with the outer border, we need to put our cornerstones on. So once you've put the top and bottom outer borders on, measure the distance along the sides. So open up the first borders and measure that distance. What you need to do, if you're going to follow the same pattern as this, is to put cornerstones in. So if you look at the quilt behind me, you'll see that in the bottom corners we have that cornerstone there. Now you might find if you make the smaller one you don't need a cornerstone, but if you make the bigger ones you will. Certainly on the 8-inch size, because the length of this is wider than the width of the fabric, so a cornerstone really helps. So that's what we're doing for this little quilt as well. So measure the length, the distance from the top to the bottom. Once you've put these outer borders on, you need to obviously trim your outer borders to size and then add your cornerstones. So really you want to judge the whole length of this, take off the square, and I give you the size of that in the pattern, and then obviously you just need to add your seam allowance onto your blue border here. But you want to make sure that those squares fit dead in the corners beautifully and match up the seams either side. So we're just going to stitch those on in place, and then that's our quilt top actually completed. So you might want to nest these seams. Now I've pinned mine in place. You could use quilter's clips, you could hand baste. I'm not sure anybody does that anymore, but it's nice to say. Make sure your raw edges are sitting beautifully together. And then we'll give this another press. Pressing is really important when it comes to quilts. So just match up your seams best you can. Okay, so that's our first side border on. Okay, you can see with the cornerstones at each end. I think it looks nice. Obviously you don't have to do that because you've got enough fabric with a smaller size, but I quite like it. Quite like how it looks. Okay, so let's put our second outer border on. Now I know this machine is super speedy, but you just take your time. Okay. So now we're just going to take that away for a press, and you can see what it looks like when it looks super duper pressed. So there is our finished little quilt top. So all we need to do now is to actually put our wadding and backing on and give it a little quilt. So I'll show you how to do the sandwich, then I'll go away and quilt it. Now when you come to quilt it, ladies, please don't do stitch in the ditch, because that's sometimes really difficult to do. So what I suggest you do is either a crosshatch design, or you can do like a stipple effect. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet. I know I'm going to use gold thread. I know. But you can use whatever you like. Just have a go. You could even just do stripes or just big squares. It doesn't matter. But you need to quilt all those 3 layers together. So let's get our backing fabric. Now I haven't cut any of this to size, ladies. So I'm going to put my backing fabric down here, which is a navy blue. So obviously in my bobbin I'm going to have a navy blue thread. Okay, let's just make sure it's a single layer. Yep, this is really a lovely blue. Okay, I've got my wadding, which is cut hopefully to the right size, and I'll just get that corner in shot there so you can see at least one corner. So this is quite a big piece, but that's okay. I'd rather have it too big. So I've got it so it's fitting my backing fabric. Now you might think that's a real waste because we're going to cut that away, but I can actually move my quilt top along and down so we don't have so much of a waste. But for the moment we'll just keep it like that, get our layers nice and flat. And what you need to do is to get some spray adhesive. 505 is good. There's so many makes on the market now. Spray your wadding. Don't need a huge amount. Flatten it out. So I'm going to spray this bit here. I'm going to go all the way across. So even though I know this is too big, I'm still spraying the whole lot, because what I don't use I can use on other projects. So now I'm going to just spray this little bit here. I do suggest you do one half and then the other half. Just make sure I can feel a lump there. So you can see, obviously you're going to press your fabrics. Just smooth that out. If you feel any lumps, do smooth them out. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. There we go. So although it's only a little quilt, a little top there, it still covers my entire desk practically. Right, so I'm going to leave it so you can see this corner here. So I'm going to spray my wadding. And I'm going to do it roughly the size of my quilt top. If you're making something a lot bigger, you're going to be a little bit more perhaps frugal. So you can see now I'm pushing that right up into the corner. I know it's fine because my backing fabric is wider, so I'd make it at least an inch wider. So I'm just spreading out the first little piece. I know I've sprayed about this much. This isn't sprayed. So I'll just get my glue. Give that a little spray and a push. Smooth, smooth, smooth. Push it out. Start from the middle, push it out, come down, push it out. So then we're coming up to the top. Okay, and then what you're going to do is spray this wadding here. Let's just do that. Spray that wadding there and just pop it down, and it should be fine. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just trim this back just a wee bit, because you can see it's a little bit big, and then this will be ready for quilting. So I'll come back to you in a sec when I've trimmed it back. So I have drawn all over the front of my quilt. I doubt you'll be able to see it, but I've drawn a 2-inch grid. Okay, so that's possibly a nice easy one for you to do. Now I've used a heat erasable pen. You can use a water soluble, air erasable, bit tricky because it does tend to disappear. So one of those two is great. Or if you've got an adapter on your sewing machine that gives you that distance between the last line that you stitched to the one you're going to stitch, in other words that stitch, it's called a quilting guide that you attach to your machine. Great, use that. I can't be bothered really. I'm just going to use my regular press of foot. I've got my stitch length set to 3. I'm using gold thread on the top, navy blue on the bottom. That's it really. I haven't adjusted any pressure or anything like that. So I'm just going to start stitching. I'll do a bit and then I'll finish it and I'll come back to you. So now I have finished the quilting. I'll show you to the side camera what that looks like. So I've done a crosshatch 2 inches wide. I've used a gold thread just to represent the sunshine there. I don't know if you can see that, but doesn't it look amazing? Absolutely gorgeous. So we've got a little one and we've got a big one. I just need to do the binding, and I've covered that many times in videos, so just look back on any of my quilting videos, you'll probably see me doing a binding. I'll cover it in the pattern anyway. So there is our smaller version of Jamelia, and this is the larger version at the back here. So if I just move out of the way, there is our beautiful June sunshine quilt. I hope you love it. I love it. It's been an absolute treat sharing this time with you and making a little version. Isn't it cute? But of course this is just the first size and the third size. If you've got my acrylic templates, you'll have 4 sizes to choose from, so you can make it bigger. You can get one between those sizes, and then you can get the little one here. So whatever you choose will be gorgeous. The next video I'll be doing is for Jay. You might have seen Jay first, but whatever the case, 2 very beautiful designs for you for our June celebrations, if you like, of summer. So this is Jamelia. I hope you make loads.